What's up, Denver? Chris Lopez here. I have a great guest in the studio today. Her name is Jen Reinhardt. Started as a single mom, became a broker and real estate investor, and now has brokered over $1 billion in sales, mostly investment properties, multifamily turnarounds, fix and flips, and her clients have nicknamed her the Fixer. So we're going to do a deep dive into how she's built her business, how she's brokered deals here in Colorado and other markets, and talking about how she helps clients maximize their property and maximize the market they're in. Good morning, Jen.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. I've gotten to know you over the last, 6 months or so, and every time we chat, I'm always like, wow, I wish we had another 30 minutes, another hour to talk more, because we get going on like fun tangents on real estate, fun tangents on investing, talk about whatever deal happened the last week. So I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast finally. Thank you.
Thank you for having me today.
So let's rewind the clock here, because I know you started out single mom with big goals, big vision. Can you kind of bring us back from like day zero and what got you into real estate?
So I didn't want to be in real estate. I wanted to get my master's degree in social work, and I had gotten accepted into Denver University, and my daughter was born with a fatal illness and a heart defect. And so I was like, I cannot work full-time, go to school full-time. And that's the reason why I got into real estate investing, and also was able to buy my first house, because I actually just got my license so that I could purchase my house, because my baby needed air conditioning. Our house didn't have air conditioning.
So you got just to buy your own house, just to do your own deal and save on commissions.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So what year did you get your license?
2003.
All right. 2003, social worker to real estate investor. So quite the swing in the pendulum there. And then how did you go about hey, you bought your first house. Now you've done, $1 billion plus in brokerage. How did that journey start? What was the next step?
So nobody wants to be like a single mom. That's not like a goal, right? But my ex, he got into some addiction issues, and he was a high-powered oil executive. And so they were taking lots of medicines to like stay up at night and do all of these projects. Like, really brilliant person, but I think addiction can impact anyone, right?
Yep.
And so I became single, and I had this newborn baby. And then I had my daughter, who has cystic fibrosis, which is a fatal lung disease. And so I was like, what am I going to do? I just had the house that I lived in, and there was a rental house that opened up next door to my best friend. And at this time, I was having issues with my credit and in crisis with divorce and all of these things. The neighbor next to my girlfriend actually said, God told us to rent this house to you, even though you have all of these terrible things happening. And that's how I got into real estate investing, because I wanted to live next to my best friend, because my daughter was dying and I had this newborn baby and I didn't know how I was going to make it.
Yeah.
I couldn't sell my house because it was underwater. It was during the recession. And so I purchased it for 170 and it was worth 120. And so I rented it out. And that's not like a sexy real estate story. It's like, well, Jen, why didn't you start with apartments? And why didn't you? Because I didn't care about real estate. Like, I didn't want to go under. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense. So you moved in this rental next to your best friend, and then your primary, you turned to a rental.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's emphasis. That was your first rental. What was the next step?
The next step was I was able to purchase the house that I moved into. And so my credit recovered. My daughter was getting better. I was able to work more. I started making some cash flow on the other house, just like $200 or $300 a month. The value had returned. So I was no longer underwater. And that's how I got my second house. I purchased the house that I was renting. And I had purchased it with like, I think $4,000 rent to own option. And this was back in like 2012 when that was very common.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents actually told me, do not go into real estate investing. What are you doing? You should stay in your small house. It's safe. It's in the Cherry Creek School District. We'll help you. And I'm like, no, I'm going under. Like, I'm waking up every 2 hours. My daughter is sick. Like, I need to move. I moved to Green Valley Ranch, which my family didn't want me to move, but it turned out to be really good for me.
Okay. And then when did you start brokering deals as an investment focused realtor?
So I started out in residential real estate, which just means I was helping people buy and sell houses to live in. And that has been my only career. So I have my degree in social work, but I didn't ever go to grad school. And so I got my real estate license to be a part-time worker, so I could take care of my daughter. And so I was just brokering deals like this. Well, it's really hard to be a realtor because you have all nights and weekends work because you're working when regular people can work, right? Like
Yep.
when they get off of work. And so I was like, well, I'm going to learn commercial real estate because I think the hours are better.
Well, it's more Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
Yeah. And so that's how I got into commercial real estate. And I found out that I don't really love commercial real estate.
Why?
Because I was doing a lot of commercial leasing. And so you're negotiating deals for months and months. And some of the deals you're just making like $500. It wasn't a lot of money. I think in order to make it in commercial real estate, you need to sell a lot of buildings. And
you're on the leasing side.
I was on the leasing side, but
Okay.
I was also fixing their projects. So we were developing Rhino at the time, which is River North, which is just a little bit north of downtown Denver. And so what we would do is we would buy these warehouses and then make them into art studios. And people really like gross leases. And what a gross lease means is you have your internet included, you have all of your electricity and all of your utilities and your parking and everything is included. And so we would buy these warehouses, make them into sexy spaces for co-working and artists, and then lease them out for $40 a square foot, triple the value of the building. And then what happened is after I did all that work, the owner sold the project and moved to California. So now I have all this commercial knowledge and I have the residential knowledge. And that's when Atlas bought one of my listings in cash. And that's how I met Atlas.
All right. So what year was this?
I think that this was around 2013.
Okay. So 2013. And this was right as that investor moved out to California.
Mm-hmm.
And then Atlas bought one of your, what type of listings? A single family
I was
home?
still doing residential as
Okay.
well. Yeah, they bought it in cash because they were working with the funds.
Yep. So they bought that. And then how did them buying that turn to you helping Atlas grow?
Well, Atlas, they started out just flipping houses. And so they were doing like 800 fix and flips a year. And then they decided to do buy and hold. And so they were buying their houses and renting them out. That's what buy and hold means. And the property management that they were hiring wasn't good. So they made their own property management. And they were like, well, now that we're making people money, right? Like we're making ourselves money, we're renting out our own houses, people are asking us to buy them deals. We need a brokerage team. And so right at that time, they asked me, hey, why don't you come into the mansion? They have the mansion across from the Denver Aquarium. And they asked me to come into the mansion, talk to our team. And I was part of the very first broker that they hired. So they asked me to come in and work for them.
And then did they give you like specifics or just, hey, we're growing, we need people help us buy properties? Like what was the criteria? Or do you even remember?
The criteria was I could do the residential real estate and then I could learn the property management with them.
Okay.
And I wanted to learn the property management side, which I regretted later on when they taught me the property management side. But that's why I joined.
You regretted that you learned it?
Yes.
Wait, okay, why? Unpack that.
So I would ask them like, hey, put me on the property management team. I want to learn how to do this. I want to learn how to work with the residents and I want to learn all the paperwork. And they're like, you don't want to go into that division. And I'm like, I do. I want to learn. And they were like, if we put you in that division, you can't leave for at least 6 months. And I was like, I want to learn because I thought, well, brokerage, you get deals here and there, but then this would be a consistent income. So as soon as I got into property management, there was like a gunfight at one of my duplexes. And then people were throwing eggs through the window, which I think it's very talented that they could throw an egg through a window because they like broke the glass. And then the owner of the company was calling me from Nicaragua. He's like, what the hell, Jen? Like, why is there a gunfight at my building and why is it trashed? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'll get a new window. He's like, you're going to call a window company? You can't call a window company. You have to call the handyman. I'm like, well, why? He's like, because a piece of glass is $10 and a window is $500. And he would just get so like frustrated with me. And it's very high pressure.
Yeah.
And I would get like 45 calls a day from residents. And I'm like, I want
How
out
many
of
units
this.
were you managing?
I wasn't managing that many. The problem was that they gave me all of the really bad ones. So I think I was managing only like 70, but a typical property manager manages like 125 or more.
Yeah. And so you got into property management and then did your 6-month tour and got out?
Yes.
Okay.
I got out.
And then just went back to focusing on brokerage.
And then I had another piece of like, this is how much, that's how I learned to do the capital expenditure prices.
I think let's pause here because I mean, while it sounds like a miserable experience and also, you realize, hey, I don't want to do that career. It's great knowledge to have as an investor and a broker though.
Yes.
And so what did you learn from that that's helped you become a better investor and better broker for your clients?
So during property management, if a building got completely trashed, you can't call your owner and say, hey, we put a bad resident, in your building. I need $100,000 to fix it, because they will freak out, right? Like you can't tell them that. It just causes so many problems. And Ryan Boykin actually taught me this. I can do $100,000 turn for $10,000 because I can put the pieces together. So I know how to get the glass fixed. I know who the carpet vendors are. I know who the painters are. I know, like the electricians and all the different things, right? So I can put all of those pieces together, and that has enabled me to flip houses. And also when I'm doing the inspections for my clients on the multifamily buildings, I can get within $500 so far, knock on wood. I always have my numbers looked at, but of, hey, this is what you can expect to have to renovate your building after closing. And I think it's really, really important to nail those numbers. Like, how much rent are you going to make? How much is it going to cost to fix up your building? Where can you add value in the building by adding another bedroom? What upgrades make sense to get higher rent? Which ones don't make sense? What areas are good to rent? What are the rents? Like all those analytics. You can look them up, and there's some analysts that can do that, but I actually did it in person. And it's like, it goes into your heart instead of just like book knowledge, if that makes sense.
So is this how the nickname The Fixer started coming about? Just because you knew all this stuff and help your clients either when they're buying and fixing up or selling and fixing up?
I think it's because of the volume that I was doing. So after I got out of property management during COVID, because my daughter was sick, I didn't want to be going in and out of the office. They actually wouldn't let me go in and out of the office. They were like, we don't know what COVID will do to her. This was before she got her medicine.
Oh.
And so I was like, fine, if I can't be here, I'm going to go by my cousins. And so being a real estate investor, I just moved to a peninsula, which my children were kind of mad about. But I was like, well, we're going to be by the water. We're going to be by the cousins. And Atlas didn't want me to quit. So they were like, hey, Jen, we're going to have you place the capital. And what that means is I would have a shopping list. You need 20 houses and 2 apartments, and here are your budgets, and here, are the contracts, and go deploy this capital, and we need these returns. And so like I learned how to make people a lot of money. And then if something were to go wrong or someone wanted to get out of a deal, they would call me, because I have all the pieces. Like there's a lot of people in real estate that know how to do analytics or property management or broker deals or do events or speak, but it's rare to have them all in one person. And so that's why people would just call me, because I would know what to do and I could fix it really, really fast.
All right.
Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. And so after COVID, you were helping a lot with the acquisitions on like the iBuying, the fun stuff. And
it wasn't iBuying.
It
was just individual, like they call it third party. So I was helping individual investors.
Oh, so okay. So like just small individual investors, the Joes and Marys and all that. Okay. Oh, cool. So they had their criteria and you just go find them a deal? Okay. So in terms of, did you talk direct? I'm so curious now. Did you talk direct with the client to get their buy box, or was that filtered out just from a current database and Atlas?
I did both. So I
Okay.
had some of my own clients, and then I would help the brokers find deals as the analyst.
Okay. I gotcha. And then when did you really start like getting into the multifamily space? I know you've carved out a great niche for you in terms of just like doing deals, knowing the market. Like when did you start getting really into the multifamily space?
When I was with my commercial firm, so before Atlas, when we were doing those buildings in Rhino, in order to fill the buildings in Rhino, what I would do is I would have a party. And we would have, drinks and mixers and a speaker, and we would open up one of our spaces and we would make it sexy and fun. So it's like this after hours mixer
Yep.
of the artist and the entrepreneur community. We called it Makers and Doers, right?
It's a good name.
Then after that event, people would be like, hey, is this space open? When can I get into one of your buildings? It's how we filled all of our buildings. So it was a win because people want to work with their friends, right?
Oh, yeah.
When I went into Atlas, so this is before COVID, it's back in 2013. I was used to doing that. I was used to doing commercial and I was used to doing residential, but I wasn't used to doing multifamily. Michael Hills, who is one of the VPs at Atlas, he was used to doing multifamily. He's like, hey, does anybody want to do work with me on these presentations? And he had like a presentation on investing. He's like, I am lazy. I don't want to do this one at a time. I want all the investors to come in so that I can teach them investing and then we can find their deals. And I was like, well, instead of just doing a little one or two in, presentation, let me just fill the room like I've done for the space agency, which is the commercial firm that I used to work for. And he was like, cool. And nobody else wanted to help him. And so I would fill the room with like 25, 30 people. He would present and then I would help run all of the deals. And so I got thrown into, it's a completely different job than commercial or residential, the multifamily. And that's how I started doing that.
I want to dive in here for two topics. One is like, I'm always fascinated by like, hey, here's an expert, Michael. Hey, wants help. You're the only person that volunteers for it. And like, I've always seen those, hey, there's opportunity to be around people like him, to, get business, to learn. Like, it's always like an amazing opportunity in my perspective. Why were you the only one that wanted to help out? Did no one else just want to like increase their business or learn about multifamily? Because to me, it seems like that's an opportunity on a silver platter to like learn.
No one knew who he was. They thought that he was just like this property manager.
So this was back before he had his reputation.
It was before he had a reputation.
Okay.
Nobody knew that it would work. Nobody knew who he was. He had just had to close a casino and a liquor store. He didn't look like a very good businessman. No offense, Michael. So it was before anybody knew who he was.
Okay. But obviously, like you took it and paid off well for in terms of like knowledge and networking.
I wanted to do that before I left the space agency, is starting to do some investing classes focused on commercial. And so I just pivoted to the multifamily.
Okay. So this is my second topic. So I have a lot of people, they're investors, a lot of times like residential agents, and they want to get into multifamily brokerage. Can you talk about how it's different and like the pros and cons of it?
So multifamily brokerage is a math problem. It's like a Sudoku puzzle. And so you have this spreadsheet, and we call the spreadsheet a pro forma, and you have to put in the price of the asset, you have to put in the market rents, you have to put in the current rents, you have to put in how much work the building is going to need, what the rates of return are as far as how much the city is appreciating, what the risk level is, all of these things. And so I think you have to know residential before you can get into multifamily, in my opinion, because I've drowned some people just throwing them into multifamily. You have to know, just some basic negotiation, how to fill out a contract, how real estate works. There's so many components to the multifamily where you put it in. I think that you need a mentor in order to make it in multifamily real estate, and you shouldn't go at it on your own.
I agree with that. Now I got a lot of people over the years, they always ask me, hey, because a lot of people want to get into multifamily, but it's often hard to get your foot in the door or find a mentor to come do it. Are you looking for mentees or people that want to go up and learn to get into multifamily on like a brokerage side?
I am. I'm working on a video series for that. Also, I mentor people when they do deals with me.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of boots on the ground of, hey, here's your deal. We're walking through the deal. And then the next step is, You got your deal locked up. It doesn't mean you're going to buy your deal. You still have 30 days, right? I don't work super fast. I find that if you work super fast, especially with older buildings, you'll miss things. And so if you're going to buy something day one, sight unseen with a bunch of earnest money, you better have a really good return. Otherwise, I'm going to walk people through that process.
Great. And let's talk about that, because I think that is a great lead into a really good checklist you put together. And I want to go into a lot of the details on here. The first thing you say in your checklist here is decide on your goal and a specific return. Why start there?
Okay, so you have people in build mode, right? Like if you're 21 years old, you don't have any money, you don't have a lot of credit, you can go in and take big risks, right? Whereas if you're in your 40s and 50s, you have wealth, you have money built up, you want to be more careful because you have more to lose, right? I remember one of my mentors saying, when I first started out, I would just try all the things because what are they going to do? They're just going to take my car. I maybe had a car, right?
Yep.
Now I have like 1,000 buildings. You can't be as risky. You have to have more due diligence. So it depends on where you start. So if you want to build really fast and you are a risk taker, you can start in a different avenue than, let's say, I helped my parents get an extra $3,000 a month so they could retire 5 years early. They wanted one house. You know what I mean? Like it's different. It's going to be a different strategy, a different pace, a different product. It's not one size fits all. There's so many things that work and so many different levels of risk. And so I think it's really irresponsible to not meet with a client and figure out what like their goals, their hopes, their dreams, their fears, all the things before finding them a deal.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. And I totally agree with like, hey, the first step is, hey, what's your goal? Because all real estate is a vehicle to help you achieve what your goal is. Like I said, with your parents, hey, their goal was fairly simple in the world for a lot of real estate investors, but they knew what they wanted. You knew it. So you got them the asset they needed. Mm-hmm. So second, decide on the market to invest in. Now, this is going to be a fun one to talk about because, Atlas, I think, is in 6 markets.
They're growing.
They're growing. How many markets are they in now?
I think like 8 or 9. They keep getting licenses every day. So okay. I would have to check. Like I've worked in a bunch of different markets and I'm experts in like 3 or 4 markets, but they keep growing. Yeah.
And so what markets are you an expert in? Because you live here in Colorado, you've helped open markets and you've done deals in a bunch of markets.
Colorado, Arizona, Boise, Salt Lake, Kansas City, and I'm learning North Carolina.
What part of North Carolina?
Raleigh.
Okay. I used to spend a lot of time there. Total random side note. Okay, but I want to talk into like how people can pick a market because obviously they have different return profiles, different price points, and also there are pros and cons to investing in your backyard and also investing long distance. So how do you go through and help someone determine what market to invest in? And let's take, since we're the Denver Investment Real Estate Podcast, you got a Denver investor come to you. How do you help him or her decide what market to go in?
I want to ask what their goal is. Some people, when they get into real estate investing, there's a new employee at Atlas right now who wants me to teach him. And he just wants to learn. And so he's like, give me the absolute hardest deal that you can think of, right? And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yes, I want to learn all of the things, right? So that would be different than someone that is like, hey, I want to live in the house. I want to rent out part of my house. I just want to be able to afford to live in Denver and start building wealth because I know this is an equity market, which means that over the 20-year picture, like things are going to be more expensive here in 20 years than they are now, right?
So okay, let's talk about that because the equity market, I know, a lot of times markets either like equity or cash flow.
Right.
Equity is growth. It makes a lot of money on the appreciation side. And when you cash out refi or you sell the property, you get your big wins. So you classify Denver as an equity market. What market in Arizona do you do a lot of stuff in?
I did Phoenix. It was in 2019.
Okay.
And I did Tucson in 2020. Now those deals are harder to find because the market is declining, in my opinion. And also we pull the reporting.
When you say declining, what do you mean? Like prices are going down or rents are going down, population is going away?
I think the numbers are kind of sketchy, where we want all the indicators to say the rents are growing, the population is growing, the prices are growing, right? It's just kind of shifty. I would have to pull the data again
Okay.
because Atlas has a fund, and it's not something that people can buy into, but just like they do it themselves. We have access to these reports, and they're called the Burns reports. And I was like, these are cool. I want to get them. So I was like, I called them and they were like, oh, these are 50,000 a year. I'm like, oh, wow. I guess that I'll be working with Atlas on those. But like the funds have so much data and so many analysts, and it's so refined that I've learned to just copy them. And one market isn't different. You know, like you can't say this market is where I will be forever and ever, because everything shifts. The political climate, like, shifts where the jobs go and the laws, and then just like the economy in general. So you can't just say, I'm going to invest here and nowhere else. If you want a geodiverse investing strategy, which means I think it's safer to be in multiple markets.
So from a diversity standpoint, I agree. But how do landlords overcome the potential headaches and issues of long distance landlording?
When I put people in a different market, we already have boots on the ground and we already have hundreds of properties.
So you can plug them into that
infrastructure? So I can plug them into that infrastructure. It would be hard to have a one-off in different markets. I had a girl come to one of my classes maybe like 8 years ago, and she's like, oh, I bought this house, but she bought it with this mentor that took half of the equity. And then in addition to taking half of the equity, like she disappeared, and then this girl ended up like going bankrupt.
Oh, that's so sad.
It's terrible because people they trust you if you are an expert in the space. I don't know who her coach was, but I think you need to go with a company that's been around for a long time, that you can see face to face, and that they have an infrastructure there. And that's why I won't do like a one-off somewhere else with a team that I don't know. It spooks me. I think it's too much risk.
I totally agree. All right. So walk me through right now kind of what you're seeing, because you're active in the market. I know you got properties, in the pipeline now that you're selling and buying with clients. But kind of contrast Denver versus Kansas City right now, because I know we've had a lot of investors go to Kansas City for years. It's a very, relatively close, attractive market. How would you kind of compare the two markets?
Kansas City is a lot less expensive. It's more of a cash flow market. It's also an equity market, just to a lower degree, meaning the values are going up. Over the 20-year picture, they don't go up as much as Denver, if that makes sense. It's not a flat market, though. But
would you say it's cash flow first or equity, or is it kind of in that Goldilocks stage?
It's a blend.
Kind of like how Denver was 10 years ago?
Yes, but okay. I don't know that it will ever get to how expensive Denver is.
Won't have like the crazy appreciation?
I'm not banking on that.
Okay. So what, walk me through like a fourplex or quadplex type deal profile you're seeing in Kansas City right now. Just, kind of like location, quality asset, price point, cap rate, business plan out there. Like what opportunities are in Kansas City right now?
So to map out Kansas City, what I did is I flew down there. I worked with a property manager. I talked to locals on the ground. I drove all of the neighborhoods, and then I started analyzing all of the deals to do the case studies. So I think that that's important work to do before going into a market. The quadplex price, I think, is between $500,000 and $600,000, depending on what part of town you're in. And it has risen because a couple of years ago, it was between like $300,000 and $400,000. So they're going up. I like the B class assets. And what that means is you have like a washer dryer, you have air conditioning, you have yard, you have garage, and you can find that there. I think that it's nice. You're in a good school district. You're close to downtown, and in Kansas City, it seems like there's multifamily mixed in with the single family, where in Denver, there's pockets of it, but it's not all together, if that makes sense.
So $500,000 to $600,000 price point for a B class type.
And the cap rates are around 5, which are not that much higher than Denver.
I thought they would have been higher than there. So they've compressed quite a bit the last number of years, I guess, like everywhere has, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the difference I think, is just the quadplexes in Denver proper might be in 900 to 1.2 million. So about half as expensive.
Okay. Are you noticing more of your clients buying in Kansas City now?
I'm noticing that the clients that want an investment that's lower risk and they believe in real estate long term are investing out of state. The cap rates have compressed so much that you have to have a lot of cash to make the numbers work, because otherwise you have an inversion, which means that your cap rate is lower than the interest rate. So where before, like when I was buying my houses, I could just take equity out of my house and then buy another house and I would have cash flow and all the numbers would work. Can't do that anymore, because then you're at 100% leverage, which means you're paying for your current house and the loan on your last house, and then your rents are lower. And it's just like this math problem, right? And that goes back to what your goals are. And so when I started out, I was working with a lot of first-time investors and first-time home buyers. And now I'm working with a lot of like surgeons and long-time investors and people that have a couple $100,000 to put down. And it didn't used to be like that. There's still a lot of opportunity. I think to get into the game, if you don't have a lot of money, you need to consider house hacking, which is living in the home.
Yeah, that is a great way to get in for very, very little money down. So with the Denver market, what type of deals do you have in the pipeline right now? And what type of opportunity do you see here in the Denver market?
I'm doing 2 flips. And so a flip in Sloan's Lake and then one in Aurora. And I think that because the interest rates are higher than they used to be, and historically they're not that high, right? Like my parents can say, oh, it was 14, 15%.
Oh, they
right?
bring out the double digit. Yes.
And we're like in the 6s, but it's still expensive. So with that cap rate or the inversion in the cap rates and the returns, we're doing some flips, meaning we buy the property for a lower price and then we fix it up and then we sell it for a higher price. And people are doing that because they don't have any money to fix up their houses, meaning like the owner occupants. If someone's going to move into a house, they're spending so much money on the said house that they don't want to go in and do the paint and the carpet and all of the things. And so they're buying the fixed up houses. The fixed up house market is really strong. If you have a house that needs work, it's likely to sit for a long time. And that's where we're going in and we're swooping them up and we're getting them for like $100,000, $200,000 off. And then because of my property management experience, I can fix them for $25,000 to $50,000. And so then there's a spread, and that's why it's making sense.
And the margins work on that then.
The margins work, and it's because of my skill set of having to turn the houses when I was doing property management.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a trend. Yeah, I totally agree. Like, if you're going to sell a property, sell it fixed up, because you said the person coming in to buy, they're already paying higher closing costs, higher rates, higher down payments. They don't want to spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 remodeling the place.
And what the sellers normally do is like, oh, this carpet and this paint will cost $10,000, so I'm just going to reduce my price $10,000. People don't like that. It's going to take them time. They have their their children and their jobs. They don't want to be house flippers. They want if you're going to have that many things done, you need to make it worth it for them. Well,
plus the economics don't work out. $10,000 saved over a 30-year mortgage. All right, I'm saving $20 a month. Like, different than $10,000 I'm saving today.
Right?
So you got some flips going on. I also know you got some triplexes, fourplexes, small multis in the pipeline as well. What do you see in the market for those?
Before COVID, when someone moved out of an apartment, we could get it fixed up for like $3,000 or $4,000, meaning we had to replace the carpet, we had to replace some of the paint, and we would just polish it and make it beautiful, right? Our turn costs have probably quadrupled. So if someone moves out of an apartment, we're having to do a lot more work and it's a lot more expensive. And I don't know exactly why I'm seeing the units that are this messed up. It might be because people call me when there's problems, but like, if you have to fix up an apartment every time somebody moves out and it's $15,000, the investors are getting tired, right? And
yeah, well, also the NOI doesn't work out very well.
The NOI, net operating income, right? It doesn't work. And so we're moving out of C class, which are the buildings without the washer dryer, without the air conditioning, like under 1,500 a month apartments. And we're moving into more of the B class, which you can find in Kansas City, or that's less expensive, or the single family in Denver. And that's what I'm seeing with my clients, because they don't want to get the calls. Oh, it's another 15,000,
Oh, I'm familiar with those calls. They stink. So you're not just seeing, you didn't just see an increase in labor and material cost. You also saw an increase in just the units being more beat up as well. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. But I'm also called to the projects that are having problems.
Yeah. The fixer.
Yes.
Okay. So there are opportunities out there for people to buy properties here in Denver. What do you think some of the areas or strategies that are attractive in the current market?
I like the house hacking strategy, meaning finding the house, making a basement apartment where you can get a roommate or Airbnb part of your primary residence. I know they're changing a lot of the ADU laws, which are accessory dwelling units in Denver. They're trying to work out more occupancy in homes. I have a client that is going to do some student housing, which Atlas won't manage student housing, but he's going to do it himself, like room rentals. I'm doing some sober living homes, other group rentals. So I'm seeing there's a lot of demand to live in Denver. You have to get more creative with house hacking, group homes, or you have to have a lot of cash. And then you can get into the B class multifamily, which trades at about the same cap rate as the C class, interestingly enough. It's just a price point difference. So there's a lot of opportunity.
So walk me through a B class type apartment that you've either seen recently or, coming down the pipeline that's attractive to you as an investor and as a broker for a client.
One of the deals that we've done in Colorado Springs, the units have air conditioning, they have washer dryers, they have little garages, and the investor has actually turned them to monthly rentals. There seems to be a demand for monthly rentals. So furnishing them, making them really pretty, letting people come. There's still a lot of people moving to Denver that want to stay here for a couple months before checking out the area, and a lot of people that come here to work for a couple of months. So we're seeing things like that work. And those are the last B class ones that I've been doing. Honestly, I've been selling a lot of C class for my clients and then moving their money out of state. So
they're, I'm assuming 1031ing. Mm-hmm. So selling a C class building here in Denver, where's a lot of that capital flowing to? What market, or is it just all over the place?
I put a lot of the capital into Kansas City. The landlord laws are a little bit easier. The product is a little bit nicer, less headache, more return. And then the single family in Denver can work. They just raised the Section 8 rents. Have you heard about that? So for a 4-bedroom,
I know for Aurora, but what I'm curious what numbers. I got the latest on Aurora, but walk me through some numbers.
So for a 4-bedroom house, the rents that the government will pay have been raised to about $3,200, and then for a 5-bedroom, it goes to $3,700, which is a really good return, right?
It's a great return. Yeah, we got a lot of clients. They'll go buy a house and for $10,000 add 2 or 3 bedrooms in the basement, and then the rent increase is $1,200.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. So what I'm doing with my clients is they're selling out of the properties that they have a lot of equity in that they want to trade up into a higher class, right? And then we're getting them, and then instead of just flipping them, we're doing a flip and hold, which I don't know if what's the term for flip and hold? Is it flip and hold?
Flip and hold for in terms of adding the value and holding on to it for a year, or just a long term?
Either or, but then you have a $50,000-$100,000 play in that property.
The term that we use is the BRRRR strategy from Bigger Pockets. The buy.
But what if you don't live in it?
Oh yeah, BRRRR: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. I think I got my R's right.
So that works even if you don't live in the property.
But right now the problem there is kind of more, it's like the BRRRR with one less, because it's hard to do that, then refinance and pull the money out.
Yep, you have to get more money.
Yeah, in the low interest rate days and high appreciate, it was easier to do that. Now it's numbers are tougher to do that. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing the BRRRR with a lot more 3 R's now than 4 R's.
Fair enough.
So so you're seeing a lot of clients like trade out of Denver and Colorado properties, and a lot of that capital is flowing to Kansas City.
And other markets.
What's the second, third market?
Arizona, Texas, North Carolina. I see a lot of people move the money around. I have a lot of crews and a lot of product and deals here. So I've been doing a lot of my deals here in Denver.
I know there was a deal recently that you shared with me. It was, I think, a triplex or fourplex, Denver metro area. And there's an opportunity to add value on there, but also party wall and sell as condos. If I'm getting that deal correct in my mind. Can you kind of walk us through either that deal or similar ones for how you're able to either increase the rents or potentially sell them off?
On that particular deal, it's a triplex and the basements aren't finished. And so if you add bedrooms to a townhouse, you increase the rent, right? So if you have 2 bedrooms, the rent might be $1,500. And if you have 4 bedrooms, your rent is $2,500 market or $3,200 Section 8. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
So I went to this investor and I was like, hey, I really like this building. Let's finish the basements. Let's put this money into here. And then there's also a zoning play. So we could file this paperwork. Instead of having a triplex, we have 3 townhomes. And now the triplex itself might be worth $1 million fixed up. But if we sell each unit separately, right, let's just say $400,000, which probably is cheap for a 4 or 5 bedroom townhome in Littleton. But let's just say that's like the worst case scenario. Now we're at 1.3. So, or 1.2, 1.3, because I wasn't sure, could I get 400, 450? Yep. And he's like, absolutely not. I don't want to do a project with you. You mean he's tired, right? He's had the property for a really long time and he wants to trade out of it and just get into something that's fixed up. Because when you're renovating a multifamily building, you have to do one by one and work with the county to get the permits and the zoning and all of the things. There's a lot of money in that deal for someone else. And so that is one that we're selling right now.
But that's a good example where it always comes back to what's your goal, or I should say, what's the investor's goal? Because, had the building for a while and just tired and don't need the business plan. That's fine. Not good, not bad. Just that's good the investor realizes that goal, and then you can get them aligned on the right property to meet their goal.
And that's how I build my business, because it's a win for him. It's a win for me because I get to broker the deals. It's a win for the new buyer. And then they'll start calling me, say, hey, Jen, what do you have coming up? Right? Because my numbers are right. They don't get burned. I think it's important to have integrity with what you do in
Absolutely.
real estate.
So how much concern do you have with all the legislation coming down the pipeline, with how that may impact either being a landlord or just the long-term, rental landscape in Denver and I should say Colorado?
I think that it's a problem. And I think so I've been hanging out at the Capitol this last week. And it's not because of the landlord legislation, even though one of the bills passed yesterday. It's because there's a rare disease bill. It's called House Bill 60 for an orphan drug exemption from the Affordability Board, which just means rare disease drugs are by definition inexpensive because there's only a couple hundred people that have them. And we need to keep funding and giving access to people that have rare diseases. And I'm passionate about that because my daughter has the rare disease. And in 2019, her medicine came out. It raised her lifespan from 20 to 80. And so I'm thinking oh my gosh, if they stop funding this, the other 90%, 95% of people with the rare diseases aren't going to get their medicine. It makes me almost cry. But I've been hanging out at the Capitol, and I don't know if you've ever hung out at the Capitol, but there's this little hallway where you can watch. It's the auditorium of the senators, and the doorman is there. And so you give the little doorman this note, and you're like, I would like to talk to Senator Calker, who I tried to talk to today, who ditched me, by the way. That wasn't cool. But you put, here's the senator, here's my name, here's the bill, and can you please come out and talk to me? So they bring them to you. And you can talk to them about these bills. And if I had known that you could do this, we should have been lobbying for the landlord bills a really long time ago. But for some reason, because at the Capitol, people don't want to be hey, don't kill me, right? I have a rare disease. It's a really hard ask to have people hang out at the Capitol. But I work with high-powered men and investors, and so I'll just go up and talk to anyone.
Yep.
Anyways, the landlord lobbyist in Denver, his name is William Much. And I saw him in the hallway when I was waiting for this senator. And I was like, hey, William, how are things going? Well, he's like, well, the bill passed, but I think that there's some amendments on the landlord legislation. And I'm like, what are they? He's like, well, I'm not exactly sure because it still has to go through the House. I'm like, well, why are they doing this? Don't they know that it's going to get rid of a lot of the housing stock in Colorado? Like, I'm seeing it. The people are calling me. They're like, sell this building, move me out of state, right? Like, we need places for people to live.
Yep.
He's like, I don't know what they're thinking. The lobbyist for, all of the Democrats that are pushing this through is over there. I'm like, well, I'll go talk to her. He's like, you should not go talk to her. But I just went and I was like, hey, my name is Jen. I have some houses. Like, I'm a landlord, but I'm here because my daughter, has a rare disease. And I want to know, like, why are you passing these bills? Like, how can we work together? There's a shortage of housing for people, especially people with disabilities. Like, how can we work together? And she was like, let's go have coffee and figure it out. She gave me her card and I went back to William. I'm like, why don't you just talk to her? But I think it's because, like, I'm a woman. I want to come up to them, like, solve the problem, work together. The landlord bills, if you say that there's all these regulations, all these taxes, people will sell their properties. One of our Section 8 houses has $30,000 of damage right now, meaning, like, the resident in the house, he had 5 dogs. Like, they ripped apart the house. The yard is trashed. The fence is trashed. The walls are taken down. There were pieces missing from the furnace. And so, like, we had to replace the furnace. And then walking through the property, it's going to be $30,000. So I went to the legislature lady and I'm like, is there a way to ensure Section 8 so more people will rent to Section 8 people, which are, like, the people on government housing? Yep. Because right now the government, if this happens to your house, you only get 1 month rent to fix it, and $1,800 is not going to cover $30,000. She's like, well, there's budget constraints because of Tabor, and everybody is asking for money. So, like, I don't know that there's an easy solution, but if you tell a landlord, hey, there's no way to get this money back, or here's your fee for your license, your inspection, your sidewalk tax now, your taxes are going up 30%. You can't in the lease without giving 90 days notice. They're going to be like, I can't afford that, and they will leave. So there has to be some way to work in the middle. I'd like to be part of that solution. But the landlords in Denver are kind of getting scared.
Yeah. And so what I love, like, I mean, you're very active in, helping people build wealth through real estate. And I love the personal touch and the mentoring and the hand holding you do with your clients, the deal making you do. But you also, I know you're very focused on having a bigger change at the bigger level as well. So, like, what's your vision there? What's your plan? And what call to action could you have for other landlords, investors, professionals out there to help out?
Well, first of all, like, if someone is looking for a smaller investment property or to house hack, I'd like them to call me and use me as their agent, because I need, to make money while I continue chasing around these senators. But it's interesting because they don't, like, a lot of them don't even know all the components of the bills that they're voting on, if that makes sense. And I was like, what is happening? Like, when I'm talking to this person and I'm like, hey, I want to talk to you about Senate Bill 60. And they're like, what is that? Or what is an orphan disease? And I'm like, that is unacceptable. They're making decisions on people's lives and they don't know what it means. And,
that's politics.
Well, I haven't been in politics, and so I might be naive, but I guess they get 500 bills to look at every year, and it's very fast paced, and you're walking with them out of the Senate floor up to the committee. I would like to have someone work with me and come up with a plan to build some nonprofit housing for people that are disabled, to preserve the housing stock in Denver so that, there's a place for people to go. The funding makes sense. It's a huge project that I would like to work on. But I just, like, with my own daughter, before her medicine, when she was disabled and sick, like, the disability attorney said, they'll decline your disability claim because they decline everyone on the first time, and it could take 3 to 5 years to go through. And I was like, well, what happens if my daughter didn't have me and my family to take care of her? And the lawyer was like, well, she would die. And I was like, well, that isn't okay on how we take care of disabled people in this country. And she was like, you need to stop wasting your time looking at ways to help people or for foundations that do this. She's like, there aren't any. Just stop it. Like, it's the more that, and this is like a downfall of being intelligent, right? Because like when you look at all the things and you see like the different patterns and you see the change and all of the things that need to be worked on, it gets overwhelming. And so it needs to be like a community and a tribe of people to impact change. Because I think that if we got together and they really understood, that maybe we could impact change at like a national level. Do you think that that's naive?
No, I don't think it's naive. I think it's a great vision and, great goal. And it's an uphill battle or an uphill, but that's how everything is in life. Any worthwhile change, anything like that it takes work. So no, I mean, someone's got to go out there and solve the problem. So as we wrap this up here, you've got decades of experience as an investor, decades of experience as a broker. If you go back and tell like your younger, more inexperienced self, what advice would you go back and like tell that version of Jen when it comes to like getting to real estate investing?
If I could do anything for other people, it would be like to dispel the fear. Without having a family that invests in real estate and without having like friends that invested in real estate, I went first, right? And so everybody told me not to do it. They're like, this is a bad idea. What are you doing? You're going to lose money. You already, like just buy one house. If you don't want that house, sell that house, get a different house, invest in stocks. Like that's what we do, right?
Yep.
And so if I could go back to my younger self, I would just tell her like, you're going to be okay. You're going to be guided. There are people that will come along next to you on your path. And then when you get to a place where you're okay, you can reach out and help other people, which is what I want to do now. I want to broker real estate in integrity. I want to build wealth for families. I want to give people options where they can stay home with their kids or send their kids to college. And I think of like, what would have happened to me if I was supposed to stay in an abusive relationship, if I was supposed to live in a bad neighborhood, if I was working 2 jobs. Like we need time and money, especially as women. And my kids have not known, well, maybe my daughter, because I had my daughter when I was 23, but my son has not known like a life where I'm not home with him when he gets out of school, or he can't go with his friends to the sporting events, or we don't have, like we have enough food. No one yells in our house. Like just creating that piece of like, we're okay. We're going to be okay. And then can I channel and focus my energy into helping other people be okay and impacting the world in some way? So I would just say it's going to be okay. You're going to be guided, and you have to take risks. If you don't go out and change, things will stay the same. And so learn from people that have gone before you, right?
That is great advice. So I know after this podcast, there's going to be people that want to talk to you for all sorts of reasons. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Phone, email, website, LinkedIn? What's the best
website
way?
is realestateambitions.com, and there's a little link to contact me, but just text me or call me. My phone number is 303-514-8491. And my team sends out an inventory list every day of all the deals that we're seeing in the different markets and what the projected returns are and how much we think it's going to take to get the deals fixed up. And I can walk you through that process. Or if you're in Colorado, like I'd love to meet you for coffee, or we could go walk through some projects together, because you're not alone and people have gone through it before you. And even if you're not, a beginning investor, I've helped people get from like 5 to 100 doors, right? Because until you get out of survival mode and until you build your empire, you're not going to be able to go out and change the world, because you're going to be busy sitting at your 9-to-5 job.
Awesome. Well, we will put your website, your phone number, and email address in the show notes. And I'd highly recommend anyone out there get in touch with Jen, because I've gotten to know you, really well the last, I think, 6 months or so. I've enjoyed it. And I see the way you underwrite deals. I see the way you work with people. And I love the attitude of building doing deals with integrity. So I think it's a great opportunity for people to connect with you. So thanks for coming in, Jen.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to have you back on more to talk deals and talk what's going on in the market. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. You got any questions, comments, want to reach out to Jen? Let us know. We are here to provide education and get you connected. See you next week, everyone.